Hi there, this is Dennis Velco from OutBüro. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. And in this episode, I have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Scott Ballina. He is a diversity and inclusion director for a global technology firm. Welcome.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, absolutely, Scott. Absolutely. Now, we've got to know each other a little bit over the last couple of years. We're both located in sunny Fort Lauderdale, and I see the great image of your background, so quite appropriate. I bet you didn't just wake up one day and said, I want to be a global diversity and inclusion director, and just immediately launched into that. So could you give us a little bit of
No,
background of kind of your history and a little bit of your professional journey?
sure. So, history, I started my career as a Navy officer. So, not having to do, or at least seemingly not having anything to do with diversity. But, that was really where I got my first taste of leading really, really diverse teams, because you have, sailors that came from, all across the country and from every kind of walk of life and socioeconomic and race and ethnic background. But I spent 7 years active duty, and then had the pleasure of joining Deloitte. And there, my initial full-time job was a technology consultant, but my part-time job was diversity. And as I kind of progressed along that journey at Deloitte, I learned that I wanted to follow my heart and my passion, and that I wanted my part-time job to become my full-time vocation. And that's been, about 8 years ago at this point, where I kind of pivoted over to doing this. And, two organizations later, I'm helping companies really change their culture and create cultures where everyone feels like they belong and they can contribute to the business.
Well, and you say that quickly and effortlessly. However, in kind of my dialogue with numerous people throughout the years, there's so much that goes into it because, as a company of even just a couple of thousand people to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people, it's a really tough job, I have found, being a diversity and inclusion consultant or working inside the company, because there's so many layers to it, from policies and benefits, but also, as you mentioned, creating the culture within the people. And all of, because everyone comes to work with their conscious and unconscious biases, and you have the tough job of trying to put in the education, but then also those policies that say, nope, this will not be tolerated in the workplace, or, it could lead to termination and so forth. So, throughout your journey of focusing on this space, maybe what have been some of the challenges in
Yeah.
in creating that? Because I absolutely empathize and respect the jobs that you do. So I know it's not, a magical wand and instantly from one day to the next. So, I'm sure
No.
you've come across some struggles and some challenges. And if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing a few of those.
Well, yeah, as you say, human behavior is difficult to change, right? Any of us who've ever gone like on a diet realize how difficult it is to change our behavior. At the last two organizations I've been at, I've been creating really diversity inclusion strategies from scratch. So it was really both of those organizations' first big forays into that area. And as you sort of stated, it can be everything from sort of the very basic foundational pieces like metrics and like policies and benefits, but the whole way up through sort of that maturity model to culture change and individual behavior. And I think each piece presents its own unique problems. I'll say maybe one thing, I've gotten to work on recently. We have decided at my current organization that we are going to allow employees to self-identify their sexual orientation and gender identity, which is pretty. Not all businesses and organizations are doing that, and it's a real challenge because country to country laws can really vary quite widely on what we're allowed to do as an employer and because of privacy. So, I've really had to partner very, very closely with our legal team and our technology teams to go country by country and determine what was legally possible. And that took us almost a year to do. And we just recently, out of all the locations we operated in that are more than 40, we found 5 countries where we can ask the questions around sexual orientation or gender identity. And we are sort of in the midst of rolling that out to our employees and launching a big self-ID campaign. So some of those barriers can be really structural and really legal. But once we have that in place, I have an enormous amount of data to determine, what does hiring look like for our LGBTQ employees? What does attrition and promotion look like? How engaged are they within the organization on our engagement surveys? So it just it allows me the tools to take a really strategic approach to creating inclusion for LGBTQ employees, because otherwise I'm just operating off of gut feeling and anecdotal information. So I think that's one thing where that very sort of foundational work can open up kind of a whole world of opportunity when you're talking about a specific previously unmeasured group of people.
Well, one, that sounds like a really great initiative, but so many studies have indicated, or at least have tried to quantify, that only about 50 to 60% of LGBTQ people are out at work.
Right.
So, and many reasons why they don't come out to work. And I think part of having someone self-identify as part of the LGBTQ community is fostering that very welcoming space in which they feel safe and comfortable in doing so. So what kind of measures, if you have some examples of, what kind of measures have you put in place, prior to asking those questions to have your employees feel that level of safety and comfort?
So what we've worked on is having out gay leaders be very visible. So senior people at the organization talking about being LGBT in the workplace. And what I've really found is that starts to create that kind of zone of safety for employees to feel comfortable sharing their identities at work. Probably the place that has been, we've seen the biggest impact of that is in India. So just a few years ago, the Supreme Court in India kind of abolished their rules criminalizing homosexuality, and we immediately had an employee resource group start there, and they thrived. They actually have more allies in that organization than they have openly LGBT people. There's some very public and capable LGBT leaders that are driving driving to work. I've gotten to visit there in 2019. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go in 2020 because of COVID, but we did a lot of training around sort of being respectful and being and interacting and with their gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender colleagues. And we've progressed so quickly that we're now in a position where we're talking about using sort of an agency that gives people career skills for transgender women in India that are sort of one of the most marginalized populations in the country, that have to often resort to begging and sex work to support themselves. And this program that we're considering gives them sort of job skills, and we're thinking of sort of hiring them through a third party to do security within our offices there in India. So just a remarkable shift in just, I think it's been not even just over 2 years at this point, from the law being passed to creating that culture where people feel safe and comfortable. And we're actually asking, how can we do more, which is really exciting.
Awesome. And yes, have been aware of the unfortunate past situations and still current situations, particularly with the trans female population in India. Done an article with one person in India. She's an entrepreneur and created a water bottling company to provide skills and training and jobs for her community. So it's great that you have identified that as a much needed service, and it's great that you're providing that training and hope to see that be successful, and that people even possibly move up within the company as they learn new skills. So that's great.
Sure. Yeah, and if I might add, we talk a lot about how are we doing sort of our part to make society better, right? And that is a historically sort of oppressed group, and not really dissimilar to what's gone on here in the United States. And that we view that as sort of one way we can really change systems, right? Because it's not just about one person getting a job, but it's really opening up opportunities for groups of people that previously didn't have access to them. And then that makes us a better company, right? It's different points of view, different perspectives, different life experiences that people have had that bring innovation and new ideas and identify risks that we're just not seeing, to make our business better and make the products we develop for our customers better.
Yeah, absolutely. And, study after study shows that companies who do embrace diversity and inclusion wholly, can benefit financially upwards of 30%. So there's a financial gain, but, doing the right thing and, being able to see those communities and those the people of marginalized, systematic structures given the opportunity. And it's not a nonprofit sector, but in a way you get to hopefully feel great about providing that opportunity to change that person's life, and then the trickle down effects throughout that person's personal sphere, their family perhaps, and having dignity in life. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I know you've also been a guest speaker at many symposiums around the globe. So, I know COVID is obviously impacting that a lot. How do you stay fresh in the diversity and inclusion space, and kind of get new ideas for innovating within your own company?
Yeah. So I have a great network of people that I stay connected to, pretty pretty routinely, which helps immensely. You know, I have a friend and mentor, Christy Smith, who was a partner I worked for when I was at Deloitte. And, you know, she went on to be the chief diversity officer of Apple, and now is on some boards. And you know, she and I kind of talk about things a lot. You know, and I also kind of seek out some subject matter experts. Like, one thing I've really been thinking about a lot, and you mentioned sort of pandemic and all the virtual connecting we're doing, is really, what does inclusion look like in this virtual environment? You know, that all of us, a lot of us are interacting, right? This is the way we're doing business. And if you're, you know, an external processor like me, right? An idea pops into my head, it typically comes out of my mouth. That can be very dominating in this, you know, in this sort of environment, right? I'm missing out on maybe people's physical cues if they're not using their camera. So people that kind of operate in that way can, you know, be kind of overwhelming, if you will. So I actually got to talk with a woman by the name of Erica Dewan just last week. We had reconnected after years and years, and she has a book coming out on that exact subject. So it was a little bit. It's also a bit of me sort of seeking out what's piquing my curiosity. What do I think my organization needs right now? You know, the company I work for builds virtual workplace technology. So this is really part and parcel of what we do and put out into the world. So I like to think about, like, where is my place within that, and how can I not only help our employees, but how do I add value to the business? So sort of those one-on-one connections are still really, really important to me. And you know, I belong to some membership organizations. So the conference board in an organization called World 50, you know, that convenes groups of D&I leaders to take on what's challenging us right now, create those peer-to-peer connections, and then also oftentimes put out their own thought leadership pieces to stretch all of our thinking.
Awesome. And a few things that I liked hearing there, and I think is very important for, you know, our audience, and it's been coming up quite a bit, is, you know, having mentors and peer networking groups of whatever industry you're in, to help you, one, stay on top of your game, and also stay on top of, you know, trends, you know, the whatever business you're in, whatever wherever you are in your professional development, there's always change, right? So there's always innovation happening. And so it's very important to have those mentors as well as those peer groups to help keep you fresh in your own professional development, but also help as you do that, help your organization continue to be fresh. Because one thing that's for sure is change, besides taxes. And, you know, an organization that doesn't keep up with the change is going to be by the wayside. So that's awesome. And of course, got to do a plug. Finding mentors on OutBüro.com, being able to indicate that you would like to be a mentor on your professional profile, and the areas of specialties, as well as indicating that you would like a mentor. So folks can leverage that to help search for whichever direction, right? Out of now doing diversity and inclusion for quite some time, what's kind of the thing that keeps you motivated, you know, keeps you going in and saying, you know, I'm going to get up today and show up?
Yeah. So a couple of things. You know, one, I did start my career in the Navy, and that was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? And I lived hiding myself from my work colleagues, right? I was essentially working two jobs, right? Here was a group of people that I was supposed to trust implicitly. They were supposed to trust me. And we, could be in situations where we're relying on each other for our lives. And I was trying to do that and at the same time censor myself, not answer questions, dodge things or turn questions back around on people so that I wouldn't share a part of myself that could cause me to lose my job, right? And while not everyone is LGBT, I think a lot of people from marginalized identities, underrepresented groups have had that experience of I can't be fully me when I go into this organization, this workplace, or kind of fill in the blank. So to me, that still absolutely motivates me to get up every day and do what I do and make where I have influence a better place to be. And then probably the second part of that is just curiosity. Like always more work to do in this area. This summer after the killing of George Floyd, I think a lot of us that have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for years and years and years, and while we've talked a lot about race and ethnicity, there's still issues that are really challenging for our Black and African American employees. And we got to, dive headlong into some racial equity work within my organization and really be brave in taking on some things that are really, really hard and really embedded in our society here in the United States and, in a lot of the other cultures where our employees live and work.
Awesome. And I can totally resonate with some of the experiences that you have. I think we've talked about this briefly before, but I'm also prior Army, and it was pre-Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I had to live a very double life, and it was very challenging. It was exhausting, frankly.
Exactly.
And it also didn't help that in the military, for those that don't know, is when you're in a job classification and you go to your unit, that you're assigned to, at least in the Army, but likely in the Navy as well, you also, if you're not married and have the ability to live off base, you also live in the same rooms with the people that you work with all day and you go out on maneuvers with. And one of the challenging things in my experience was whenever I arrived after my what's called job training, AIT training, show up into Germany, into Aschaffenburg, Germany, and I thought, wow, this is awesome. I get to my unit and assigned to the room where I'm going to be living with the other two people at my similar rank, and one of the guys was an absolute flaming, screaming queen. Literally would wear a diamond-studded cocktail ring in his BDU military uniforms, and he was like that. He was very similar to that person on MASH, who was just so outlandishly, gay and or pretending in the show to be kicked out of the military. This guy was, pushing the boundaries, very open, and this was in 1987. And it created, kind of that guilty by association concept. And so I had to work extra hard even to not just hide myself, but then because of that guilty by association, living in the same room with this person who, if he could, he would have got every day in drag. Seriously, he was pretty out there for the military guys. Don't hate on me on that for that statement. And there was this gosh, I could do a whole episode of just me talking about the military days then. And then my boyfriend, my partner of all of my 20s, we met in the military. Well, I was a civilian then, living in Frankfurt, and he was in counterintelligence, and we lived together, and we were his unit actually found out. Not a good thing. It's hard to keep a secret from those in the intelligence community, right? And he was actually kicked out of the military because of our relationship, and we fought and got him an honorable discharge. But so even after I was out of the military, dating a soldier, because especially due to his job, it was still living kind of that double life. And so I can totally appreciate with the experience that you have had and how that has impacted your career decisions and passion and priorities. So awesome. So for organizations out there, it is amazing to me that it is 2020, and I come across sometimes companies, and even very recently, a company of, they're not large, they're about 2,000 employees, and they just launched their employee resource groups, including LGBT, and they're trying to do the right thing all internally. So they currently don't have kind of external coaching and guidance. So, for a company that's relatively young, especially on their LGBT diversity and inclusion kind of organizational goals, what are maybe some of the tips and ideas and strategies that you might recommend for organizations like that are kind of just on the beginnings of their journeys?
Sure. A couple of things. I think first, use the network of people that do this for a living. I would say it is the most giving group of people that I have the pleasure of working with and knowing. I think most of us that do this come at it from a philosophy of wanting to share everything we know and have learned over our years, and we do it, really freely, because it makes all of our organizations better, and it makes the world better. So number one would be, like, you don't have to go this alone, even if you don't can afford external consultants or hire someone internal to your organization to do this. Reach out to some of those organizations that I mentioned. Out and Equal is also a great one when it comes to LGBT workplace inclusion. Their conference every year is always really, really great around sharing information and companies, learning, sharing their best practices and what's working well for them with the broader community. So number one for me is always ask for help. The other part, especially if you've started an LGBTQ resource group, I think really engage with your employees and ask them what they need. What do they think? What is their real lived experience like within their organization, within the organization? What barriers are they seeing and pushing up against? And then really think about the work that you need to do to start to address some of that. And then, probably the last thing I would mention, Dennis, and you sort of teed this up kind of early in the conversation, is around bias and the unconscious bias all of us have. So Dennis, the third thing that I would share is what you teed up really early in our conversation. You mentioned unconscious bias, right? And we all have it, whether it's a Zoom or a business. But I would invite those organizations that are starting this journey to really think about how they can design their business processes and their tools to help mitigate bias within their organizations. So, for example, if you're really wanting to change the kinds of people that you're hiring into your organization, you could spend some time reading and learning about how the kinds of words you use in a job posting can affect who applies, and create a little tool for your recruiters or your hiring managers, whoever writes those job profiles, to kind of avoid those words. Or you may want to spend some time in being really deliberate about your interview panels, right? That there is diversity on your interview panels, that you have men and women and people of color and LGBT folks, so that one, those candidates that are coming in have a great experience, right? And they see the diversity that you want within your organization. But also, when that panel debriefs and asks questions, that they're kind of mitigating the assumptions that each of them may have made about that candidate. And research shows us that sort of diverse interview panels really lead to different hiring decisions. So think about, and those, I could give you examples sort of the whole way through that talent life cycle around, work assignments and performance appraisals, et cetera, that really make a difference in who you're, hiring, promoting, and developing within your organization. And that could really, while it sounds mundane and kind of drudgery, can have really big impact.
That's really great advice, and something too that you said earlier is ensuring that you are promoting with an eye for diversity, because when people in the organization see people like them in higher level positions, whatever that is, studies show that when there are women in higher levels of position, women in the organization typically overall see the opportunity and go for jobs and go for promotions and so forth. And similar with the LGBT, people of color, and so forth. So really like that example that you gave earlier, and just bringing that back in with what you said there. So, well, I know we're just about out of time. Is there any last thoughts before we head off today?
No, I think, as I said, for your listeners, this is a community that likes to share what we're doing. So I would just, I would invite anyone that, had more questions or wanted to connect with me to do that. And I'm happy to share anything that I might know that could help you in your journey.
Well, awesome. And for those out there listening, be sure to join OutBüro.com, create your professional profile. There is a group currently for employee resource groups to share knowledge and so forth. And also we'll be launching a diversity and inclusion group for diversity inclusion professionals to collaborate, just as Scott was mentioning. So I encourage everyone to join there. And any diversity and inclusion professional out there who would like to take the reins of that particular group, I welcome you to message me. Happy to make you the administrator and moderator of such a group. So, well, I thank you so much today for your time, Scott. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I appreciate you carving some time out to speak with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, Dennis.
Absolutely. And I look forward to getting back into sunny Fort Lauderdale soon, and maybe meeting you out for a drink. Well, again, thank you, everyone. This is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. You've been listening to OutBüro Voices. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to take the time, now that you have rewarded yourself with listening to great content through, to smash that subscribe button and click that bell to ensure that you're notified as new episodes come available. Also, you might want to listen to this on the car, maybe laying on the beach, or vacuuming your house in those red 3-inch pumps that I know you have. So you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and about 10 others. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.